Okay, hi there. This is Ernest, or if you like it in Spanish, it's Ernesto. I'm the End Times writer. I write about the end times. I'm working on my second book in print. I got one that's on an ebook besides that. But the point today is I got a prophecy update on famine and food shortage. And that's what I want to get to right now. So, a lot of people don't know what's going on in the world, but we have major famine major famine going on in parts of Africa, and I'm going to get to that right now. But to give you the setting, why I'm doing this is in Matthew chapter 24 in the Bible, in verse 7, Jesus is talking and prophesying about the end times. Near the end of the age comes, and that's, we've been in the end times for a long time. I already mentioned that in a previous posting, but he gives a bunch of signs that are going to happen. And some things he says in Matthew 24, the chapter 24, verse 7, he says, "For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom." Okay, he's talking about wars. And there will be famines. Okay, that's our key word here, famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. So, wars actually often result and go, or extended wars, especially, are extended time like that. It leads war leads to often famine and pestilence. People start dying, and then there's people getting sick from not having food. The war disrupts commerce, farming. People getting hurt and malnourished from not enough food. And it's like in the Middle Ages, we heard a lot of people. There was wars. There were a lot of these in big time and all kinds of wars. But of course, the main war we see right now is what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. And that war is significant because both Russia and Ukraine supply other countries with a lot of wheat besides other products, but together they're like one third of the world's exporters of wheat. Keep that in mind. Wheat. I'm centering on wheat for a reason. Wheat is a staple, right, for bread. Bread is a staple just about everywhere for food. And this disruption that's been going on now, a war that Russia thought it would end in a week or so, is now close to 7 months or so, and it's still going on. And they got food in silos that they can't export because of this war going on, and it eventually it's going to just start rotting, and it's a shame because people need it. So they also provide like fertilizer. Ukraine provides fertilizer for other countries to grow their crops. Now that's been stopped, and you need some fertilizer if you want to grow some good amount of crops. But now that's been cut back too, and so the wheat supply is affected. Now, major the major the major drought that's been happening in part of Africa is around the Horn of Africa, three countries. If you haven't heard, it's Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia. I mean, we have historic like drought for like not seen, like they say, like in 40 years. They have not seen anything like this in 40 years or more, and people are dying. There's been about 2 million cattle dead from lack of water. People are leaving, migrating with what they can carry to go to find food because there's not enough food for their animals, and they can't hardly feed themselves. And it's children are dying. All this sad stuff happens. Um, that's that's a major famine. They've missed four rain cycles, and um, that's all. The report I read on that didn't elaborate, but I'm thinking that means maybe 2 years of hardly any rain at all. You know, that's it's been going on for a couple of years now. Then, and it's still going on. Um, and of course, you know, there's some of the only food they can get is charity groups sending in food by airplane to help feed them. and this is a major, major famine in the world. Then, you know, let's move on to India. If you haven't heard, India in this last year, 6 months ago, they had record heat wave, a record heat wave in India, and it damaged their wheat crop. The reports mention their wheat crops were damaged. Of course, other crops were damaged, but that's one of their big ones. Their wheat crop was damaged in India. India is the second most populous country in the world after China. Now we got in South America, you got Brazil. They have a severe drought in Brazil. It's crippled their agricultural output. Now they do grow some wheat, and for them, wheat is not a major crop like some of the others, but nevertheless, their wheat supply is down. And then we have China. China, the most populous country in the world. China, because it's so big too, China, they're suffering the worst wheat crop, again, worst wheat crop in history. Now, theirs is not due to drought, lack of rain. Theirs is the other way around. They've had too much rain, flooding. Too much rain has disrupted the farmers being able to grow. And they export like 20% of a lot of food products. And now a lot of other people are not getting as much food. There's shortages. And let me read this, because in the book of Revelation, Jesus gave this revelation to Apostle John. And John talks about in Revelation chapter 6, the background on that is there he saw these scrolls in a vision, and nobody could open these scrolls except the Lamb, which is Jesus. That's the Lamb of God. And Jesus opened, they had seals, and the third seal he opens in Revelation chapter 6, verses 5 and 6. I'll read it right now. Revelation 6, 5 and 6. And Jesus opened the third seal, and he heard the living creature say, "Come," and I saw and behold a black horse, and its rider had a balance in its hand. So a black horse and the balance. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius." Listen to that carefully, wheat. In other words, this black horse and the scale represents famine, because one of the basic staples of food, the wheat, costs a denarius. Now, in biblical times, from what I've read, a denarius is pretty much equivalent of a full day's wage. That was like a denarius. So they're basically saying, or what this basically means, is that a quart of wheat was like a day's wages at that time in the future, when this happens. Imagine working all day just to buy a quart of wheat, which could be a loaf or just a couple loaves of bread for a full day's wage. That's what it's like. So this is a time that's still coming. But notice how wheat is mentioned, and all these shortages and famines I'm telling you right now, one of the major crops affected is wheat. This is a prelude to what's coming, and it's going to get worse someday. You remember here, if you lived here in the United States, when we had this pandemic and people started a toilet paper shortage, people were panicking, and then that was off the shelves, and then they started a couple other items, and that's just a small itty bitty sample of what's going to happen down the road. What's going to happen down the road, folks? Things are going to get really bad worldwide, and we need to know that things are happening right now in a big way, and it's contributing because of the COVID thing. Hopefully a lot of that's closing down. A lot of that's political, folks. But the cause of it, closing stores down that people were saying are non-essential, really. If you have a business, that's essential for you to make a living. And, that contributed to and the high gas prices are contributing towards shortages. We could get even worse, folks. And I remember in the 70s, I'm old enough where I remember as a teenager, I just started driving. I had my own little car I bought for $500 at the time, and I was in high school. There were, because of things were happening in Iran and oil and cutting it, cutting down the production. There were gas lines. You'd be in line at a gas station and you'd be out pushing your car. I'd have a friend with me or two, and we'd be pushing our car in line because we didn't want to waste the gas we had in our tank because we needed all of it because they were saying there was shortage. I don't think most people have seen that around here. I'm not talking about because some particular gas station had problems at the pump or that I'm talking about gas stations all over, and that's a little scary when you see that happen. But they're like, we got over that and different things are happening. But what I'm saying is, we need to start thinking and praying for these countries. Pray for rain. Pray for that they'll have rain where they need it. We need to be aware that something like this could happen very well, and it's happening in the parts of the world, and we need to be aware of what's going on. Not just everything seems okay for the most part, especially if you're living in the United States or some of the westernized countries. But there's a lot of people living in agricultural type countries where they're more underdeveloped and it's harder to grow stuff. They depend a lot on imports. And we need to be like Joseph. Hopefully, where in Egypt, he had a dream where God showed him about cattle and famine coming. And they said, well, eventually he goes to the king and is able to tell him about a dream and interpret that there's going to be 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of bad, lack of doubt. You need to start saving the wheat and other food. And they start doing that. And sure enough, after 7 years, the drought comes. People come from other countries to come to them to buy food from them because they stored it up. And we need to do stuff like that. Countries need to do that. And I say this because we need to be aware, folks. Things are very serious in some parts of the world. Serious famine not seen in 40 years or more. Some are saying 60 years in that part of Africa. And depending which way the weather goes, and we can't. People talk about climate change and this and that. You can't control the climate, folks. You can't change the planet's climate. That's all. Good luck to those that try. The scientists that say this and that, but you can't control it, folks. We have fairly reasonable, pollution standards in the United States, anyways. Those days of the Industrial Revolution when you see way back in the early 1900s, and you'd see these smokestack-filled cities where black with soot. If you've seen the newsreels, those days are over. We're not like that in most cities. The only time you see smoke like that is if there's like a natural fire, and if the winds bring it for long distance, or a volcano somewhere brought ashes and stuff. But normal, just cars driving around in the city, we got pretty good air quality. It's not. You can see blue skies lots of times still, and you can see the sun and everything's not bad at all. But they want to tell you we need in Europe they started taxing people because they wanted to have money to try to combat the climate change. You can't combat it, folks. There's nothing you can do. There's only artificial things you can do. Like some people try to seed the moisture in the mountains for earlier snow, for snow skiing or something, like do that over here in Tahoe sometimes. But that's not going to change the worldwide weather. That's going to be just in that little area, and you need moisture to begin with. You can't do it without it. But I'm saying, think about this prophecy. Jesus said this would come. Wheat specifically is going to be one of the main crops affected. We have a prelude of that going on right now, and things will get worse. But keep reading the Word and read Revelation. And if you don't understand all of it, I doubt there's anyone in the whole world understands 100% of it, but you can understand a lot of it. Like this is pretty plain. Times are coming. Things are going to get worse, and we just start thinking of these things. So when they happen, we know it's predicted. Jesus said it would happen. So think about them, pray about them, build up your faith. And End Times Writer is out for this episode. Bye.